So, Victoria, this is Victoria Farrow. Thank you very much for Victoria in joining me on my podcast. Very nice to finally meet you. We've spoken a few times over the last so many months. Victoria is a practicing architect. She is a subject lead for architecture at De Montfort University. She is the founder of BIM in Series and BIM in Charity. The list goes on. Many hats, many things. Victoria, tell our audience about who you are and everything you're involved in, because the list is endless.
Thank you. Yeah, I like to keep myself busy. Yeah, you got most of it right. I'm practicing architect. I am an educator, a very passionate educator. I've given the last 15 years of my career and life to working towards positive change within architectural education. So that's been both within my academic jobs and also in my own personal life. I set up the BIM in Series charity in January of this year, which raises funds for the betterment of architectural education and to support students who are within architecture and suffering from financial hardship. The BIM in Series charity organises a series of conferences. So once a year, we get together and organise an annual conference around the topic of BIM. It was motivated by the 2016 government changes. So I've been running it ever since. I'm also co-founder of the Association of Architectural Educators, which is a body of educators within the UK. Prior to that, there wasn't one. We set it up in 2012, and I hosted the first inaugural conference in 2013 to get it set up. And I would say that probably been thrown in the deep end and running an international conference so young and developing a network like that has fueled my ability to develop my own networks, such as the BIM in Series kind of charity. It's drawing from my experience in those earlier days.
Well, that is,
That's a quick
as I said to you
overview.
before, well, it is, but it's detailed in so much as I think you have a lot of followers on social media and what have you anyway, and I think a lot of our audience will already know of you. It's, I kind of bow down to your fame, if you will, because it's I'm in all of the work that you've done. We've spoken beforehand several times. You mentioned the annual conference that you hold. Let's talk about that first and foremost. That is, remind our audience of the date. It's February, isn't it?
Sure, it's that's the BIM in Leicester 2025 International Conference, which will be hosted at the Leicester School of Architecture on the 5th of February. We are well into the planning now of that conference. I'm really, really lucky that I get some fantastic speakers from around the world, and the profile of the conference is just growing year on year. We've got some fantastic sponsors, including yourself, but Foster and Partners have pledged their support every year for the conference, so they have been incredible. And Vectorworks, I have to kind of give a hands up to Vectorworks as a software company who have been so kind and so supportive, not just financially in terms of giving, but also just in the background, discussing ideas for the event and providing speakers. But we're lucky in that we get speakers from, I would say, the most famous practices in the world who
Yeah.
come and give their time, but they present alongside local practitioners and academics and researchers. So the really lovely thing about the event is we don't close the door on anybody. So I have to be quite flexible. It can't run like a traditional conference with a kind of call for papers and a strict deadline, because I recognise that busy practitioners are not able to follow the timeline in that way. And so we still get kind of speakers submitting their interest even now, and I'm really accepting of that, because I really just want really good content for the audience, which is about 70% practitioners and the rest are students from different schools of architecture who come. I really like the fact that we're able to offer that learning and knowledge to different schools of architecture who come in groups to watch the presentations. Yeah, we're really excited. It's looking really good so far.
How many people, obviously you've mentioned very kindly that I've been welcomed on behalf of Architecture Vogue magazine to sponsor alongside Vectorworks, Foster and Partners. So thank you very much for allowing me to do that. And it's for me, it's all about raising the profile and awareness of everything that you do. How many are you expecting to attend? It's obviously a huge footfall event, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always gets incredibly tight in terms of people wanting to come. Every year we get between 300, 350 guests. I have to have a really, really careful eye on the tickets. The student tickets are free to the students at De Montfort, and the other ones we charge for. And then there are reduced tickets for school groups. So I already know that around 5 schools of architecture are bringing groups of students, which is just brilliant for me. And they all get to network together. But yeah, we will have between 300 and 350 guests. We'll also have just over 30 speakers. I anticipate a few late acceptances. Last year we had 36 from
Okay.
all over the world coming to present. So it's a big event. It's always incredibly popular on the day.
Well, if you think about this is something that you've created, more kudos needs to come to you for that, because look at what you've created and look at the exposure you've generated and the level of high profile people that you're attracting to come and see you and listen to the speakers and everything that you've done. So
Thank
that,
you. It's a lovely
it's
event in
huge.
that it covers many bases, I think. That's what's really nice about the event, and every year we continue to expand on it. But there's one level of it which is, yes, a very high profile international event in which the speakers benefit because they get to share their work, they get to learn, they get to showcase their projects, but they also get to see projects of other practices and kind of take that experience back into practice to develop their own work. So the conference is functioning on that level. Obviously, it functions in terms of marketing the Leicester School of Architecture and spotlighting us as a university. But there's another layer to that, which is that I've always maintained that I organise it alone, but with a group of student volunteers. So we run it as a live project, and the students therefore get skills and get to build their confidence and learn how to organise a huge event, much like I did in my teens when I did the first AAE conference. So they learn they're exposed to everything from negotiating with the speakers, the marketing, the posters, the banners, they make the cakes, they do the logo design for the t-shirts. Everything at the event, aside from the bags and the notepads, is handmade by the students. And I think that gives the really, really kind of quite beautiful one-off experience at this conference. Everybody who comes always raves about it afterwards. And I think it's that human touch that the students and hopefully me bring to the event. So that whilst it is a form conference and very professional, it's also really friendly and it's a great network to be part of. And I think that's why we keep getting people coming back and investing in us, which is lovely.
Well, I'm hugely looking forward to it. It will be a very good day. So you as an individual, then we've talked about all the things that you've done and all these wonderful events that you host and have built on. Go back a few years prior to all of this, and you being working at the university and so on. What's your background as an architect then, working in practice and what have you?
Yeah, well, I trained to become an architect at Nottingham University. I spent a large portion of my life in Nottingham, and that's where I got my first job as an architect, working on a variety of different schemes. So I did quite a lot of residential, I suppose, in my earlier career, but I loved that. I've always had a real love of working in domestic residential sector.
So where are you actually
Big or
from then? You
small.
obviously studied at Nottingham. Where are you actually from?
I'm
You're
originally
fairly
from
accentless.
Yeah, I'm originally from Hull, so I grew up in
Okay.
Hull. My
Yeah.
dad is an architect. He set up his practice when he was 21, and it's still running, and I'm a director of that practice. So quite
Okay.
often, when I get spare time, I'll be doing private jobs through my dad's practice.
Yeah.
But I did when I was working in Nottingham for a bigger practice because I left home and I was adamant that I was going to be independent and not work for my father's practice. I wanted to make it on my own. I worked in some bigger practices to get a kind of broader experience of the larger jobs, working with really big developers,
Yeah.
which was really interesting, particularly on the larger residential jobs. But I also worked for some more kind of commercial clients. who I probably shouldn't mention like the names, but bigger jobs, hotel firms, which I really enjoyed working with on bigger, much bigger contracts into the millions. And then I set up my own practice again because I was adamant that I wanted to be independent of my father's practice, and just started doing small kind of consultancy work, small projects and practice for quite some time. And that company name is still open, but I tend not to practice through it. I kind of do my private work through my father's practice now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as I said to you before, it's a very interesting background, but clearly, well, your passion and your drive to succeed and everything you've achieved to date with your architecture background and the BIM series and the charity and everything else, it's your kind of passion, your natural passion shines through. And not many people have that. They really don't. And it's, if you are teaching youngsters that are coming up through the ranks, even half of, if they're, you just exude passion and drive, and at that, that.
Yeah, I don't really know. I've always had, I can remember distinctly that one day when I went to teach for the first time at Lincoln University, and I remember leaving with a big smile on my face. And even though I'd enjoyed, and I do enjoy practicing, particularly the point where you hand over or you're meeting the client, I think it's that people to people interaction that I really, really love. And I remember when I left that first day of teaching and I had the biggest smile on my face, and I just thought, this is absolutely what I want to do. And it's never, I'm lucky, I suppose, because it's never left me. I really do genuinely have a kind of big drive and motivation for making the learning experience better as best I possibly can. And I guess in my different roles, I've gone from a module leader to a year leader to a program leader of multiple programs to a associate professor to now a kind of subject lead, head of 2 schools. At each one of those levels, I think at the heart of it all has been the student experience for me.
Yeah.
Maybe that's because when I was a student, I found it really difficult, and I didn't understand why it had to be so difficult. And I always wanted to just make sure that the students under my care enjoyed it and had fun and really got to fall in love with architecture. Instead of it being this scary world that I'd encountered at 18, I wanted to frame it in a way that was accessible. And that's what I've always tried to do at whatever level I am within education. It's always to try and just make it enjoyable for the students. And that's the side of the BIM and series conferences that I love doing. Yes, it's a big scary conference, but if it's tabled as something fun and accessible and an enjoyable learning experience, the students don't get daunted by it. They do learn and they enjoy it, and they're hugely proud of what they've achieved at the end. So I try and do that when I'm working with students in the studio on projects. It's just try and make it fun.
That's really very good. The world needs more people like you, quite frankly.
Thank you.
Well, my daughter has just turned 16. She's going to be going off to college next year. And it's a very daunting time. And
it is.
It really is. And because I'm ex-military, 30 years ago, I worked in the military and doing all stuff all around the world and stuff. So I'm a little bit more gung-ho, and I say to her, come on, let's just get on with it. But it's just not like that. She's a young girl. And if she was to fall under somebody like yourself, if she had tutors and lecturers in the future that are like you, then I know she's in safe hands. So, hats off for that side of the work that you do, because that's brilliant. It's a tough gig, I'm quite sure, but it's really very good. And I'd imagine through COVID as well, because you're very personable.
Yeah.
COVID must have knocked you for 6 as well, I would have thought.
It did, but I found other ways. And also the students found other ways to connect with each other. That was when I was at BCU, Birmingham City University, and the students set up a group called Architecture Families, which they basically formed online families between the year groups. So year 1, 2, 3, kind of like a mentoring thing. And I connected with the students in other ways. They were contacting me on WhatsApp and Teams and emails and phone. And I think, we found a way, but it was really difficult when you start to remove the ability to actually sit next to a student and sketch together, or to pick up their model and start to analyze it by hand and show them. And all of that is done via screen. You lose that kind of the beautiful thing that is architectural studio. You know, when you're in the studio with the students and you can pick up a pencil, you can draw on the drawing, or you can kind of show them physically with a model, no, this is what I mean.
Yeah.
That was really difficult through COVID, and also trying to support kind of the mental health side of things. If they were struggling, it was
Mm.
easier for them to disconnect. Whereas when they're in there, you can kind of, you keep your eye on, you know, the students, and you notice if they're not themselves much more if it's face to face.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a tough time.
Well, again, absolutely fair play to you. So what, with everything you've got going on, it's from all the things we've spoken about, what does kind of, how do you see your future then? How's your next 10 years? What do you want to happen?
Oh, in my own personal life or in
Bit of
my
everything. Tell
career?
us.
Gosh, 10 years. I've no idea, to be honest. I tend to,
That's quite nice, actually. It's quite
this
nice
sounds
to not have
really
any idea.
bizarre.
It's,
This sounds really odd because I've actually had a very structured career in that I went to school, I did my A levels, I went to university, I studied architecture, I got a job, I went into education. It's, if I look back, it looks like it's all planned. Actually, I very rarely have a plan. I fell into teaching by accident. I was made redundant in 2008 crash, and
yeah,
I had no idea what I was going to do. I tend to follow my heart. So in my last job, when I was working at Birmingham School of Architecture, I didn't leave because I didn't like it anymore. I just felt like I had contributed as much as I possibly could, and I wanted to contribute at a wider level. So my role now is certainly much broader in that it's across 2 schools, multiple programs. I'm managing the teams that are managing the students. Sometimes I think about going higher into in terms of leadership. There's lots that I want to achieve with the charity group, but also in the back of my mind, I'm conscious that my dad is getting older with his practice. And so I suppose together, the two of us are talking about what that might look like in the future, and
yeah,
whether I take more of a leading role in 5, 10 years' time. I don't know. But yeah, in the back of my mind, I suppose there's like a drive to always want to be pushing forwards. But in terms of what that might look like, I don't have a, in 5 years' time, I want to, I don't own 10 houses or
yeah. Well,
to be
if
happy and
when you do,
healthy would be good.
well, when you own those 10 houses, remember me, won't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's nice. There is, my path is similar. It's you can have all the very best laid plans, but just literally, as long as you have the drive, passion, and the want to achieve the next thing and better yourself and help others and share
Yeah.
experiences and so on and so forth, then the path will carve itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also health and happiness have to sing in parallel with your career motivations.
Yes,
And
you're quite an avid runner, aren't you? Is that right?
I'm an absolutely huge runner as long as I can run for and as often as I can run. I've run since I was 17. I've got a real love for it, and yeah, like that's a big thing for me in my personal life is rebuilding my running at the moment because I'm currently injured. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a chance to clear your head as well, isn't it? Because all the busyness that is
Yeah,
life, you put your
absolutely.
trainers on and go out in the countryside for a runner. It's for an
It's
hour,
a
go for a
real
run.
reset. It's a real
Yeah,
reset to the mind. And actually, some of my best conference papers, my best student projects, my best designs, my best ideas have often been born either on a good run, a good swim, or if I'm
yeah,
in the gym. I
yeah,
think when you're moving and active, the brain then starts to relax and start to kind of get more creative. So I always encourage the students to have a break, you know, and they're kind of sitting with an idea that they can't figure out or a design that they just can't crack. Go for a walk, go for a run, go and do something active because it will, your brain then will start to kind of tick into it and relax. And when you're stressed and trying to figure out a problem, um, by not moving or just going over it and over it and over it, you can get into a cycle that's negative.
yeah. Absolutely agree. So, well, it's yeah, you've got you've got an awful lot on your plate. You've achieved an awful lot, and I'm absolutely sure that we will be seeing and hearing a lot more of you as your charity event grows and more people come to see you, and your name will be up in lights before you know it. That's I'm
I've
absolutely
got big
sure of.
ideas. I mean, I think I look at the timing at the moment is really strange. I look at where the profession is, and I look at what's going on in practice and the struggles for architects in practice at the moment. And then I look within education and I look at the struggles there and the changes that are coming from ARB and
Yeah,
the landscape of architectural education that is constantly changing. I can't help but sort of sit and think for long periods of time about, what can I do to help both sides and yeah, heal some of the cracks. And I suppose the older I get within my career, I'm more interested in the gaps between education and professional practice and how we can bridge those. So I do think there are big answers within there that would help both sides. I actually just released a call for papers for a journal which specifically looks at how we can blur the line between the two.
okay.
So that should, bring some interesting ideas that I hope I can offer back to the world of architecture down the line.
You
That's
are
a big.
you are
There's a big
literally
plan.
always thinking. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, I'm not sure I've
I
got
have on
much
my
going on, but I've
profile.
got this, I've got this, I've got this.
I think I've got on my profile for Facebook or Instagram that I'm an educator looking to rock the world of architectural education. And
There
that's
you are.
kind of
Yeah,
how I try and come at it. Yeah.
yeah. Well, just absolutely keep doing what you're doing. I follow you with a huge envy and massive
You.
interest, and I'm really looking forward to February and just us catching up in person and listening to everything and all the speakers and everything that's going to go on that wonderful day. How do there are tickets left, are there, or not now?
There are tickets left. There tends to be a huge rush towards the end of December, beginning of January, where everybody starts to buy them.
Yeah. And where
But
where do
this
people go to buy these tickets? Just to remind everybody.
They can go to the BIM in Series charity website, or they can go to any of my social media channels. So LinkedIn, I'm posting the ticket link constantly. It's on the DMU store. But this event will be really special because I am showcasing 5 new themes. So we've got BIM in education, got loads of academics coming from different schools of architecture to talk about BIM and how it's been taught in schools of architecture. That's not been done before. So that's going to be a really interesting session. BIM implementation, so how practices are starting to implement within their workforces with BIM. And then share a project is one of my favorites. I love that one. You just get to see practices showcasing like really cool projects. So we had one last year, which was from Bjarke Ingels Group, Jens Karlsholm showcased kind of one in space. And then we have kind of ones that are like located in Leicester. So the scales are huge. And then we have BIM and climate management and BIM in AI. So really in-depth topics, which will be brilliant. Can't wait.
Absolutely. Yes, it's going to make for a really good day, interesting day, and hopefully the gates open and as many people that you can possibly welcome attend. And
Squeeze
it's
in. Yeah.
yes, and
Brilliant.
I'll be stood in the corner watching on with envy. So no,
Yeah.
it's really good. Well, as I've said, I know we've spoken on the phone. I'm hugely envious of everything that you've done and that you are doing. Genuinely, hats off for the work that you do. I think it's
Thank you.
inspirational. It's a pleasure to know somebody like you. It's
Thank you
brilliant.
very much.
Yeah, I'm very very I'm passionate on your behalf about everything that you're doing. It's really good teaching the youngsters as well as everything. You're a very very busy lady, and well done. Just make sure
Thank
you look
you.
after yourself. That's the
I
first and
will.
foremost.
Yeah. Thank you very much.